Welcome to T.P. Hogan's Author Interviews. Today, I'm joined by young adult science fiction author Adele Jones.
Blaine wandered to the front door and worked the key into the lock. Pushing inside, he ripped open the envelope and began to read the cover letter. It was from an agency he'd never heard of. His head whirled as he scanned the words, so much so the keys dropped from his hand into the floor. "Blaine, that you?" Blaine scarcely registered his mother's voice. Scattering the other letters onto a hall stand nearby, he reread the information and frowned. "Honey, I'm doing a party soon, won't be home until after dinner." "Blaine, are you all right?" In the silence that followed, Blaine noticed his mother was standing beside him, awaiting a response. He shook his head, feeling as if a dense fog had engulfed his mind. Realizing she'd started reading over his shoulder, he shoved the papers back into the envelope. "What do you have there?" Blaine shrugged and lowered the envelope to his side, as if it wasn't anything significant. He needed time to think, but his mum wouldn't be put off. "Looks official." It was then Blaine noticed the colour had drained from her face. What did she read?
Well, we have today with us Adele Jones. Hi, Adele.
Hello, TP. How are you?
I'm very good. So if you'd like to give our readers a brief introduction of who you are and what you write.
Okay, well, I am an Australian author and I write mainly for the young adult market.
Yeah. And where did your writing journey start?
I love stories. Our family loves stories, but I suppose if you're looking at when I actively began writing for the market, as in writing something that I wanted to get published, I would have been in my early 20s, and back then I was actually writing historical fiction. So, yes.
Cool. And in a single sentence or a slogan, what encompasses the story expectation for your readers?
Science fiction for the real world.
Nice. I like that. So have you got some interesting information on the books or the book series that you've written?
Yes, I do. I can tell you a little bit about that. I have written, well, actually, I write a few different things. I write poetry. I have written short fiction and short non-fiction works, some inspirational works, and I tend to often have a bit of a social justice theme. It's probably not intentional, but it just, they're the things that probably fire me up a bit. And I've also released the Blaine Colten trilogy, which is a technical medical crime thriller, and that's through Riser Press. And so it broaches, that particular trilogy broaches some pretty tough issues, but I do this by basically putting a face to those issues through my characters and then raising questions that they experience through their journeys in the book.
Oh, okay. So you say that you're Australian, so where do you come from?
Originally, I come from, I'm a farm girl, actually. I am from the Darling Downs, and that's now called the Western Downs.
Yeah.
And I now live on the mountaintop in Toowoomba, which is on the Great Dividing Range in Queensland.
Great. So did growing up as a farm girl have any influence on your story writing or your writing journey or anything like that?
I think it had a massive influence on me because you have a really increased awareness of your need for human connection. Community is such a big factor in the whole rural lifestyle, I think. I guess because you don't have people sort of up against you all the time. You value those connections of family and friends. And I guess that also was something that I didn't realize even as a child, how much we facilitated those events, even just on holidays or on weekends. We'd sort of ride kilometers if needs be, just to go and connect with our neighbors, and we'd hang out like a pack of kids, and we were quite interesting bunch, just lots of fun, get into all sorts of mischief, not harmful, but and I think that it took me a really long time, like over a decade, to realize that writing needs that same community, that same connection. And so that was really when my writing journey started to take off, was when I met someone else who was a long-term friend, but we just never realized we both wrote. So it was like, you write? I write. Oh, let's get together and talk about writing. And so that's how our writing group began, We're the Quirky Quills. And that sort of developed into all sorts of things, like now we're part of the Omega Writers Organisation, which is a national organisation. So you get really connected and it's just so encouraging. So I love that bit. So that was part of my growing up that I really took a long time to translate into my writing journey. And sorry?
Keep going, sorry.
Oh, no, you're right. I was just going to say too, I think also the farm life, work ethic is a big connector with that, because anything in life, I think whatever your work ethic is growing up, that does come through in a lot of the way you approach life. And when you are on a farm and you have jobs to do, like you might be making sure cattle have water, or that there are animals calving, or there's people, people are relying on you to do those things, your parents, your family, fencing, all that sort of stuff. If you don't do it, there's that natural consequence of something will happen, and so, or could happen, I should say. So there's responsibility and a sense of onus, so that helps with the writing, because there's no one there cracking the whip over you unless you've got a deadline due, and so it helps with that. And of course, imagination. We used to run around and do all sorts of crazy stuff, invent planets and stories, act them out. Always fun. Build heart's best thing ever. But just saying. But yeah, a real love of the landscape, love of the earth, just that real connection. And I think that open space is really good for creativity. So, sorry, long answer to your question.
No, that's great. That's great. It's really interesting to come from that mindset, to explore that mindset. That's really awesome. You said earlier that your Blaine series, was like a medical mystery and things.
Yes.
What you do is you're actually a scientist. So how does that influence your writing and your story journey, and what impact has that had?
Well, I think I probably perceive life in a slightly different way. Like when you talk to people from different professions, they see different things in a situation. But I really like that whole challenge of nutting out facts. It's like, oh, what can I find here, and how does that fit in here? So I think the historical research, that's probably what sucked me into it. Was really, yes, it was interesting, but I really liked the satisfaction of going, this year, and I need that scenario, and that has to fit in here, and actually looking up the details and finding this, and this, and putting it all together. And I was like, family thought I was so weird, but that's all fun. And I think that was a real happy place for me. And I think too, in writing the science-based fiction, because I actually write the near science fiction now, so that's my young adult area really now. And so I think that's been fun, because I can use the field I'm in, so that sort of biomedical area, and actually push that out a little bit. And so near science fiction feels like it's real, but it actually isn't. It's fictionalized, and so I write it for the real world and just like to blow out those bounds a bit. It's quite fun.
Well, I'm glad you have a lot of fun with it. It actually does come across in your stories, but it's like opening up this different worlds that you have no idea exist, and then you jump into it and you think, oh, she just makes it sound so simple and makes it sound so easy, and oh, of course that makes sense.
And thanks. That's what I hope. Hope people are going, gee, how would that work? That's not good.
The Integrate series, Blake, I keep calling him Blake. I know his name is Blaine, and I keep calling him Blake. Integrate Blaine. They're the two separate words.
People have called him Blaine. It is. It's like I've had a few comments from readers, and it's Blake, and I'm like, Blaine. Happens. I think it's just kind of a brain crossover. It's too easy.
Yeah, it's the Integrate and the Blaine, it's that.
Yeah,
sound.
Sorry. I'll change the title if you want. No, I better not.
In the series, Blaine Colten has a specific condition. Was there a particular reason behind that choice?
Well, Blaine is a survivor of mitochondrial disease. And the idea behind the book is actually, what if science could? And so that thought really came from a conversation with a friend, a family friend, and I were just chatting, and her brother had mito. And I'd never really asked her about that. And I was just, I'm just nosy. It's a fact of the matter, helps. And I just kept asking her, so, what is it that, keeps your brother in a wheelchair? And she would tell me a bit about it. And I'd say, oh, so how is it inherited? And she'd say, oh, it's complicated. And then Well, are there any sort of treatments available? Well, it's complicated. And then, what about genetic options? Well, it's complicated. And so that was the answer. It's complicated all the way. And it wasn't my main area. Like I knew about it. And that's the thing. She'd asked me, do you know about mitochondrial myopathy? Do you know about mitochondrial disease? Well, I'd heard about it, but it wasn't my main area of interest. And so I thought, well, I'm going to find out more about this. And I just started digging through information just to see what I could learn. And the more I read, the more complicated it was. It's just an amazing complex illness. And so I guess originally I didn't want to use that because I didn't want that sense of, oh, you're just writing it about him. He inspired me to write it. But I actually wanted to invent an illness that was kind of Blaine's own, if that makes sense. But the thing is, I also wanted to write it in the near world. And so it was like, well, this is the only one that really ticks that box of it being so complex that it's going to be an impossible to try and fix. So, yeah, and so that was really why I went with that. It was in the too hard basket. and the same thing with the treatments, though. And I guess I wanted them to feel real. So I looked up a whole heap of either hypothetical treatments or treatments that had been trialed in some form. And so nothing, had obviously gone to the full range where I was like, yay, this works, let's roll with it. But it was actually just different treatments that I thought, that actually sounds like it has some validity. And so I would use that. And that's what I used to kind of define also a custom-made treatment for Blaine's custom-made, unique, never been seen before type of mitochondrial disease. So yeah, that's where all that came from.
That's good. That's good. And where did the idea for Blaine himself come from?
I actually had the idea for the story probably for a good 2 years before I wrote it. Sadly, that young man passed away a year before I did get it published, which is a bit unfortunate. It would have been really fun to be able to present it to him. I think it was a year before I actually submitted. I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, so it was actually before the book came out. And so when I actually acknowledged him and asked his parents, and that was really nice that they gave me permission to acknowledge him in the beginning. But Blaine as a character himself was just, I guess, originally it was just for a short story. That's what I had in mind. I just thought something fun and that. And so obviously it was way bigger than that. And I knew that fairly well straight up after trying to get the idea down. And Blaine himself was fairly clear in my mind. He was there and I thought, yeah, I know who Blaine's going to be, and he was like any teen. He wanted to fit in. He had those same goals and aspirations, but I'd given him some really strict instructions. So it was like, okay, Blaine, this is an action story. You got that? Technical thriller, adventure. And so he's like, cool, we're rolling with that. And then we're about halfway through the manuscript and he kept looking at this girl, like, who is this girl, Blaine? I don't know, but she's cute. I'm like, Blaine, no, focus. And he just kept looking at the girl. And then he started talking to the girl. And so then I had to go back and write the girl in. So I'm just, really appreciative to Blaine, not for making all that extra work. But anyway, we got a romantic thread in it. So thank you, Blaine, for that. And I guess in writing him, though, Blaine himself as a character was really challenging because I wanted him to be believable and, like any character, accessible to the reader. But his whole life had been defined by illness. He had everything, like he had no choice for himself. His whole life was dictated for him by other people's choice. And then suddenly he's got this whole world of opportunity. And so he could have been a really spoilt, obnoxious piece of work. He really could have been, or he could have been horribly passive, like, oh, well, that's how life is. And he's none of those. And I think Blaine as a character kind of really found his own in that he really came out of himself and just with this healthy combination, like of this real teenage attitude. Like he's a little bit sarcastic, he's impulsive, but he's got a really good sense of humor, but he's hugely determined. And it's like, it's like the thing you keep slapping down, it just keeps getting up again, and it's actually in one of the novels, there's actually a reference to that quite similar, like the thing that won't die. But, it's fun to write him, but he's also really naive. Yeah. And that's actually an important part of the first story. It's part of the plot because he's so easily manipulated, because he hasn't got that real context to align things with. So he is a bit more vulnerable. He does actually kind of swallow a few lies that, I guess you and I with a bit more life experience would say, well, hang on a minute. I know this, so let's line this up. So he is a bit more vulnerable in that sense. but because he's also smart, you know, and he's had a lot of time to think, things kind of gel together in his mind. And so he's not just going to lie down and die. So he's like, hang on a minute. I don't know if this makes sense. I'm going to do something about this. So yeah, he was fun.
He is a really awesome character. He's really fun to read. He really is.
Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you. I like him, but I'm biased.
Really? I wonder why that would be.
No idea. You'd think I was the author of some ridiculous thing like that. Anyway.
So you've really encompassed him and really in depth him as a character. He's really fully developed. So what were the experiences that you went through with, you know, you've got this character, he's awesome, he's amazing, he's got some struggles that he has to go through, and he definitely has his vulnerabilities and his faults and his weaknesses. So with him developed, what were some of the experiences that you went through for fleshing out the story or researching the series or finding the rest of the story?
Right. Okay. I, as an author, approach my novel writing by filling my head up with all this stuff and then spewing it out of the page. Sounds really revolting. But, you know, I never used to be a fan of the fast first draft.
Yeah.
But a few NaNoWriMos later, and also when I wrote Integrate, it was just a, hey, let's just write a novel in a month sort of thing. But I had all of the stuff in my head and I had a really clear view of the plot and that. So probably Integrate and Replicate, I just did all the research of the things I thought I needed. Mm-hmm. And then I wrote into that. And I guess it allows the character to have a little bit of flow and the story to kind of get its own pace. And so that worked really well for those two. And then I'd go back with extra research. So I'd sort of flesh it out a bit more with specific issues that I sort of think, well, I need to know a little bit more about that. Oh, sorry. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. And so, and that sort of is the way I approach those stories. And I'd actually also write in, I guess, extra detail into the story so that I would go back and go, oh, yeah, I need to make sure I keep this, and there because we're leading to this. So that was my setup notes, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so the problem with that, though, was, of course, when you go back, sometimes you're like, okay, I need to pull this bit out, so there's not so much information overload, but it's finding that balance. So I actually don't do that now. I tend to try and just write it basically and then just you know, flow with that. Now, the problem is Integrate was actually written as a standalone.
Uh-huh. Yes, I know that feeling.
Yeah. So that made it a bit interesting when I came to writing, not so much Replicate, but Activate, because there were some setups in Integrate I would have done differently. So, yeah, that made Activate extremely hard. I mean, as you know, you've written an amazing series and you know how hard it is to get the follow-ons because you get more threads, you've got to put them all together. And because I had to tile those threads in Activate, some of them were a little bit hard because they came from an angle that I wouldn't have probably put them in originally if I had have known. But that's fine. Nothing like a challenge, right? So what I did is I asked a whole heap of experts. I think I asked, was it 5 or 6 experts in their fields? Mm-hmm. I sent either by phone interview or face-to-face or questions, you know, whatever it was. I would, some of them gave me heaps of information to read and say, you know, have a read of this. This is what you need to know for that. And through those conversations, I got the details I needed to actually write Activate. But I already had a first draft because I didn't have all of that detail available when I needed to be finishing that, because I try and have that first draft written before the previous book goes out. Because then, you know, if there's things you need to kind of set up in the previous book, you've got the option there to do that. So I sat down at our computer, which happened to be dying at the time, so it was really tricky. I was terrible. It's like, anyway, and I just had all of that information around me. I'd consolidated it into notes, and it was like a matter of going through the manuscript and going, okay, that scene won't work. Delete, gone. And I deleted probably over a third of the manuscript.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was basically where I had to restart. And that's how it came together. But yeah, there was really cool ending twist. Sorry, couldn't keep it in. In my head, I know how that would have gone, but yeah, it wasn't ever going to work in the end. So sorry, readers.
Have you ever been asked any questions or queries about the books that surprised you from readers? Have they contacted you and asked you some stuff that just...
I like getting questions. It's fun to have readers ask you questions about your writing. But I think probably the thing that has surprised me is that people are surprised about my career. Does that make sense? So the science writing crossover.
Well, you write science fiction, so you know.
Well, exactly. I know, but I used to write historical fiction, so you know. But yeah, I think that surprised me most. It's like oh, but don't you work in science? And it's like, yeah. And I guess in my experience, science has required me to be very creative, and I think they're actually a beautiful complement, you know. But that's I think I know a lot of really crazily creative people in science, so to me it seems a really perfect sort of you know, connection. But I think some people do find that a little bit surprising. But that's not about the story. Sorry, that kind of little tangent there. Oh, and one thing I was surprised about was a question from one of my friends who had a red convertible sports car. Have you read Integrate? Yes. I know you've read Integrate. Do you remember the red convertible sports car?
No.
Okay. I'm just totally shocked now. No, well, the reason that car is in there is because she dared me to put it in, and her. Oh. So the gorgeous blonde in the red convertible sports car is a real person. Sorry, can't put the no real life characters disclaimer on it for that one.
Based on a real life person.
That's right, but only that person. But it was fun. It was like, I dare you. Fine, done.
Here you are. Just don't annoy you, because once you're in the story, you could be killed off.
Well, see, I didn't kill no, well, I can't say I didn't kill anybody. Not spoiling, but I didn't kill her. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
That would be bad if I killed her. I like that friend.
So, the Integrate series is a really good series, and I recommend other people read it. Like, highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. So where can readers find you and your books?
Okay, I can be found right here in my media room, but my books though, sorry. Seriously, my books are in lots of places, surprising places that I don't even know they are. They're kind of sneaky like that. You'll get this. Actually, this is really cool. I actually get readers who send me photos of, oh look, I saw your book in this bookstore, picture. It's really fun. I love it. It's like, yay. And so that's kind of nice. But I don't remember the names of all the bookstores, sorry, but I do know the main ones. So basically they're available. Probably the biggest question is asked, are they electronic formats and paperback? Yes. So if people prefer ebooks or paperbacks, you have both options. So that's always nice. You can actually order them directly through the publisher, Riser Press. Mm-hmm. I can order directly through any bookstore, just quoting the ISBN. But there are some bookstores that stock it, and that's always handy because then you know it's right there. So Coorong Bookstore, and there's also a number of small independent bookstores. Again, I don't know them all, but there's USQ, Omnia Books and Beyond. So that's actually out at the university in Toowoomba, and they've also got a Springfield, yeah, I think that's the right place, campus. But I believe, yeah, they stock the books here. There's Little Gnome Bookstore, and that's in Wynnum, and also in Wynnum is the Mad Hatter's bookstore. Beautiful, like seriously, these are such cute bookstores. You've got to go there. The Mad Hatter bookstore actually has this whole mural on the wall that the bookstore owner painted herself. It's gorgeous. Nice. Really. Anyway, tangent again. I'm good at those. I saw it. Get this, Kmart in America.
Nice.
I was doing a search for something totally unrelated, and I'm like, oh my goodness. It was the book. I'm like, wow, okay, didn't know that. I don't know if they stock it routinely, but it was there. And online bookstores, there's Bookaburra Books, Amazon Book Depository. Oh, hang on. No, take that back. Boomerang Books. Barnes & Noble, Waterstock, Books in Stock, and a lot of other ones that I find randomly on occasion. The other thing, too, is if you are a reviewer, and as you know, any author loves reviews. So isn't that right?
Yes, absolutely love them.
Yes, reviews are good, thank you. And that's NetGalley. They actually have the books available through there. So if reviewers want to go and get a copy that way, go for it. Also, booksellers, if they want to purchase books, there's Novella Distribution, which makes it really simple, and libraries. You know, I love libraries. You get so many cool books there.